Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
I'm happy we didn't have smell-o-vision for that when you guys were pulling that carpet up, by the way. That looked disgusting.
Okay, so here's what was really gross. When we started doing that, it didn't smell when you walked into the room.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say I expected, I was concerned that we would find some stuff just because you and I both know, being in the construction industry, like sometimes corners get cut, unfortunately, and we've all been there and seen that. Yeah, as much
Nothing's
as we
ever cleaned up 100%.
Yeah, and because of like how the family came to own the home, like that carpet had already been replaced. So in my mind, I'm like, I bet we're gonna find some unfortunate circumstances. But the minute you lifted that carpet, I think Mikkel said it smelled like raw meat. And it smelled rancid. It was the grossest.
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show. This is where we talk about everything home improvement, construction, DIY, design, every single week. Thanks for joining us. I have my good friend in the house here, Tool Girls Garage, Sarah Listi. There are so many. I can't even put you in a box.
Why bother? You know, it's okay.
Welcome to Around the House, and famous TV show person too.
Oh, my heavens to Betsy. Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. You had to throw in that joke about the famous TV person. You had to go there.
Oh yeah, you know me. This is what we do. So
right.
First
I'm
off,
pumped to be here.
Yeah, I love your show, by the way. And I don't say that a lot about stuff. And it's not just because I've got a friend up there, but it's a real legitimate show that I go, oh, wow, this is not super scripted. You're out there dealing in the murder house.
No, in fact, there's no scripting behind it, which I was excited about. You know, we hear, I don't know how you feel about it, but when you go into a TV scenario, you never really know what to expect. And this was my first filming experience like that. And so I was concerned that like that was going to be pushed a lot, like, hey, say this or say that. Obviously there's questions asked, but all the answers are like 100% authentic. And, Mikkel and I had so much fun in sometimes those like interviews where it's just him and I and the producer. Oh my gosh. The stuff that like ended up on the cutting room floor, you can't imagine. It was amazing. Nice.
So we're talking about Murder House Flip over on original Roku.
Yes, it is a Roku original. So what's cool with Roku is it's a free service. I believe it's in 80 million households now.
Yeah.
So they're in a bunch of different countries. And if you don't have a Roku at home, you can obviously go onto the Roku website. Again, it's one of their few originals, and they're expanding. They're doing some big stuff. So I think there's going to be some exciting, fun stuff coming for them. I wish I had like inside scoop. I don't, but just the little tidbits I hear, it sounds like it's going to be a really fun couple of years for them.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah. So let's talk about the show a minute before we get into like all the other fun tool and project stuff. But
yes,
this thing, you guys started out with a bang on this. That episode, you guys just like started out with the rocket ship Ferrari or something. You did not hold back on the first episode.
You know what's funny is when we filmed the show, that episode, believe it or not, we filmed last. It just came down to like, scheduling and stuff. And we obviously, you don't know how that stuff's going to get ordered out. And I'm glad they used that as the first one because it was a really big project. And it was such a recent, it was the Jodi Arias house where she murdered her then boyfriend, Travis Alexander. Really tragic, gruesome murder. And
brutal.
Oh my gosh. And very little of the house had been updated or changed. So by the time we came in, even though it's been, I want to say it's like 10 years.
Yeah.
it was almost eerie looking at crime scene pictures and like being like, oh my God, this is the same tile. Like, I mean, some stuff, yeah, but it was still, it was a little creepy.
It was the same bathroom sink was
shower
creepy.
and everything.
Yeah.
That was pretty gross. But, you know, I think it's when this couple bought the house, it didn't occur to them through that process that like this was that house. It just didn't cross their mind. They just thought they were getting a really great deal. And by the time they found out, they couldn't do anything about it, you know? And so it was a big honor, I think, to be able to, you know, be a part of something like that and to be able to walk into, you know, a family's home and like that family, they had young kids and, you know, it was a family house. And to be able to walk in and be a part of changing something, you know, really negative and dark and making it something so positive. I mean, when we left, like there was not a dry eye in the house. Like that was such an impactful, crazy moment. It was definitely a high note to wrap filming the show on, for sure. That feeling was, I've told you, obviously, in our conversations, like if you could bottle that emotion of like showing this family a house and like and it wasn't just them, it was all of them. Like, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. You just want to like smell it on a bad day or something, you know?
Yeah. And by the way, smelling on a bad day, I'm happy we didn't have smell-o-vision for that when you guys were pulling that carpet up, by the way. That looked disgusting.
Okay. So here's what was really gross. When we started doing that, it didn't smell when you walked into the room.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say I expected. I was concerned that we would find some stuff just because you and I both know, being in the construction industry, like sometimes corners get cut, unfortunately. And we've all been there and seen that. Yeah. As much as
nothing's ever cleaned up 100%.
Yeah. And because of like how the family came to own the home, like that carpet had already been replaced. So in my mind, I'm like, I bet we're going to find some unfortunate circumstances. But the minute you lifted that carpet, I think Mikkel said it smelled like raw meat. And that was it smelled rancid. It was the grossest, like, I don't even know. It was so bad. Like I literally can vividly remember the smell, and it's like, there goes dinner. My appetite's gone for sure. But it was
it's like you opened up death's door and you were staring into it. It was just,
it was so, we just didn't, the smell is not what I would have expected because it's, I mean, ew. It was hard to explain. I'm glad that the smell-o-vision, that would have been convenient.
Yep.
But it was, just thinking of that was, oh.
But see, knowing you, I watched that. I know your reaction. I'm like, there's no way that's scripted. I can tell that is 100% real because that was just 100% Sarah right there. I was just laughing going, there it is. There it is. That is the real deal.
Well, it's funny because you had mentioned that. I had a couple other people that have known me over the years say something similar. And I'll be honest, like of all of the positive feedback, any feedback, that I think meant the most to me because it's very hard when you get put in a weird situation. And, you know, I always felt like I was 100% me, but the fact that everybody else also saw that was, I know it sounds dumb, but like it really meant a lot for me to hear because you just don't know how things are going to get, you know, you just don't know.
You hope and pray that editing does you a favor and doesn't go the other direction and not do you a favor because
that would have been bad.
So really, you guys did 4 or 5 days and had to make 20 minutes out of that? I mean,
yeah, it was like that house was 5 full days of filming and it was 25-minute episodes. Yeah. So, I mean, which it sounds weird. I think you and I talked about this, but it was so crazy because those days were long days. There's a lot, and there's crews that are working behind us too. And there's so much that you don't even get to see because so much gets cut out. But also like it makes for a really fun storyline because I think obviously, especially in the renovation TV world, as much as I wish some more we could have seen or as I could have shown more, I feel like it kept a nice pace and it kept it fun and interesting. You know, there weren't really any lulls in the show, which I think obviously is a credit to not for them being quicker episodes, you know?
And then you had some challenges too. I mean, the Golden State Killer house had its own challenge. I looked at that and was like, as a designer, I'm going, wow, you've got some challenges here on trying to make that feel safe.
Well, and you know, that one was sad because this woman had the owner, beautiful, beautiful woman. Her name's Karina. Beautiful home. Her and her young kids had bought this house, and they found out shortly after she purchased it, she had construction crews working there. She wasn't living there yet. Yeah. And she got a call that they were news crews out front of the house recording. And so hearing that, and then of course, things start to make sense. People start to give her information. And then she realizes, oh my God, what am I going to do? And her bedroom was the room re-renovated. And that was unfortunately where the Golden State Killer entered and, committed this Eric, the atrocious
gruesome crime. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, some of the stuff that the detective that was a huge part of that investigation told us, that was so hard to wrap your head around. We got to see the creek where he hid. And it was.
Oh, wow. Okay. So all the stuff that didn't make the show. I mean, they talked about the dishes for a second and that was it.
And, there was so much more to that story because he went and ate a snack in their kitchen while in the midst of this brutal crime. I mean, it was just, of all the houses that we did, I would say that one was the one that I had the hardest time with too, just as an individual being in it and then trying to really, because so much a part of how I viewed it was, what would I do if I were these homeowners? What would I want to change? How, you know what I mean? How would I feel better here? That one was the hard one because you just were what's going to make you feel better?
And you couldn't do anything in the exterior because of HOA type stuff, because it was more of a condo type community, it looked like.
Right. Yeah, it was. And it was, really beautiful little community, but you were stuck with what you could really do. And so it was a interesting experience. I will say too, that one was a challenge for Mikkel and I from a different standpoint. Obviously the emotion and just limited with HOA, but also she had beautiful taste to start with. It was a beautiful space. So you kind of felt like going in and you're okay, so what do you want me to do?
Yeah, it's like you got a brand new 2022 F-250 and you're oh, I'm going to repaint it again.
You're what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
So it was, and we really took a risk with her with that space for sure. And Mikkel and I really talked about it a lot because it was kind of how far do we want to push her out of her comfort zone? Because we knew her personality, obviously, through previous discussions. And then, of course, you get to see a lot of that on camera. But, we really wanted to make it right for her and wanted to do her proud. And so it was, that was tough. And you kind of have to roll with it. And we had all these hurdles too, because I was concerned going into it because, of course, there's been discussions behind the scenes with production and the media team and the art department, et cetera. And they're obviously trying to come up with plans. So, photos are taken, et cetera. And I kept looking at it and I was I don't think this is going to work here with the doors. And once we were there, I was and I said, until the day of, I was hey, we're going to try because I think it would look really good. And I felt like it was the least intrusive option. But I think what we ended up doing with kind of the double French doors where it really didn't look anything like it had started out. I think that ended up being really the right call for her too. Because I think she would have been more, I don't know. I don't know that that would have, barn doors would have fit her style, even especially after meeting her in person versus early meetings, I
could see that. And it's tough having to build barn doors like that on site, get it to work without it looking like completely cheeseball.
It was. And we had already done this big board and batten design through the entire bedroom. And so I will say what ended up being very cool is we could just continued it on those doors. And so it really did feel like just part of the room. And when you walked out, from the outside, it looked like a sliding glass door. Yes. But from the inside, it didn't. So it ended up being really an interesting process. It was one I'm really glad we got to be a part of it. Kind of stretch your muscles a little bit, if you will.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to have those challenges, right?
You do. One other thing, my daughter brought this up because we had a bunch of her kids were over last night and their friends were over, they're all in their 20s and we're watching and I popped it on and they got sucked in. But here's the funny thing It was hilarious. And so I sent you a text last night with a picture of them out there watching it. But here was the funny thing they took away from it, which I just laughed. Alfalfa's house. What's with the age of old television shows? You know, it's not like you're talking about, you know, if Mark Hamill was killed, you wouldn't say it was Luke Skywalker that just got killed.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
Think,
it's funny because, you know, we had a guy, like our expert on that house, he had like written a graphic novel because that murder happened in the 50s.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. So, or I think it was mid 50s. It was a really long time ago. So he was telling the story. And obviously one of the hard parts is, you know, and I guess we shouldn't call it murder either because the person was
that's true. That's
self-defense.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me rephrase that.
Unintentional murder or death or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
The death. But listening to the story too, it sounded like he did the Alfalfa series or he played Alfalfa and then he had a really hard time finding work afterward. And it really kind of snowballed his life in a lot of really difficult ways. So you really do have a lot of sympathy, you know, for him. And I'll say that the other 5 houses that we did, so obviously the Golden State Killer, that was a serial killer. It was different. Yeah. And the Arius one, a little weird, but the other ones was really like crimes of passion, you know, where something happened, some interaction just got out of control and somebody got hurt. And it was really sad to hear that. Like, I mean, I don't know. You just kind of just glad that I don't know. I mean, it was,
it's a trip. It's a trip.
Yeah, it really was. It was hard to hear it, but yeah, the Alfalfa house, it was funny that we referred to it that way
but everybody does it. And it's not that you guys did it, but I still don't remember the name of that actor. And it's funny how that era that we put people in by the character name and not by the actor's name.
But I wonder if it's because, people move on to play so many roles throughout like a 20-year career, 30-year career.
Yeah.
I think back then, like if you played a role, like that was the role. I don't think they produced as many shows like in terms of volume. Now there's, you know, cable and every streaming platform, et cetera. Like to be fair, I wonder if it's just a sheer volume changes how that works.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, because you didn't have a lot of like Lucille Balls. It was like one of a few, right? Like
absolutely, yeah.
And she really played herself more than anything.
Yeah, no, she did, and that was the good part of what she did was she just had to go out and be herself with that stuff.
Yeah, I love her. She was amazing.
Oh yeah,
they don't make them like that anymore.
No, not even close.
No, not at all.
So let's talk about what you're doing. I mean, enough about the TV show. That's all cool and stuff, but man, you have built a career around building, crafting, tools, all of that, and building cool stuff.
A little of everything. You know, it's funny when I came into the power tool industry, you know, little background, I always say I was like raised with a hammer in my hand. My dad was like the original DIYer, like before DIYing was cool. Like I grew up watching, you know, This Old House, like Bob Vila, like that literally just, I can hear his voice so distinctly. And it's such a emotional tie to my childhood. But my dad was one of those that really was super passionate about making everything he touched better somehow. And he was that way with people too. I mean, that was a really neat facet of him, something that hasn't changed. But as a child, it was really cool when you see somebody like one of your parents, you know, renovating a bathroom to make it handicap accessible for my grandmother who lived with us, or building an addition on the back of my childhood home. Those things are really mentally, emotionally impactful. They were like these moments that you kind of can't forget. But I mean, I saw him do all kinds of stuff from those kinds of additions. He had his construction business on the side where he did renovations and construction additions, et cetera, for other people too. Cool. In addition to his full-time jobs, this man never stopped working. I have no idea how he did it. But then, you know, I also got to see him like rebuild engines, and like he was super frugal. He still is. Yep. And it's like a lost art. Like you talk about a jack of all trades. That was my dad. So I saw all of that growing up. And so I never felt intimidated or scared of building in general. And when I was in my mid-20s, I had my son, and obviously not to get into that too much, but I always credit him a lot with kind of directing me towards more woodworking because he was early in his autism diagnosis and he was having a lot of health issues, and it was a really difficult time. And it was one of those, I would go out in the shop, and at that point it was literally my garage, and it was like half of the garage, and it was like a handful of tools really. And I would just work on different projects, and it was like this, I always called it therapy. And
it's your mental health minute building something, right?
Yeah. And there's something about that mix of the creativity and then also having to critically think of like structure and like, how do I need to incorporate supports here? And what am I looking for this to support? And then even to height, so it's what do you want it to look like? But then it's how it needs to be built. And then also the sensory experience of like the smell of wood and, fine tuning your tools and learning all those learning curves, especially when you're really trying to hone in on some like detail work, and just the feel of sanding. And I mean, it's just such an amazing, all encompassing, it uses like every aspect of your brain. And honestly, from there, I never looked back. On the media side, obviously of what most people know of me today, that really didn't start till 5 or 6 years ago. I started doing power tool reviews for a publication, and it was a really amazing experience, and slowly but surely got into it more and more, and then ended up sort of spinning out on my own, and sort of initially really known as a writer, if you will, more on the, writing about power tools, right? And reviewing these products. But honestly, it really came down to, I was spending more time talking about tools and using them, which was not really the design of myself, because I wanted my opinion and my feedback on a product and on a tool and on an innovation to really come from experience in it and use, and hours behind that tool and hours using it and really tried and true and tested. And so I kind of shifted gears a little bit. So now it's much more of a hybrid situation. I still do write, but yeah, I mean, it's funny how it all kind of, I just focused more on what I was doing with the tools rather than the tool itself, if that makes sense.
Nice. And, manufacturers, I can say this for myself, and I'm sure it's the same for you. Sometimes manufacturers put us in an interesting position where they send us tools that suck.
Yeah, we've been there. We've been there.
I mean, you get it and you're like, wow, you're going to produce this. And you're very honest. I'm very honest. And that puts us in these interesting situations sometimes where we're like, I'm going to talk about this, and it's a dud.
And honestly, I think it's all in, we've talked about this too in the past. I think also meeting a tool brand where they're at, like I wouldn't expect a entry level, like DIY based tool to go up against, a Festool or Makita or Milwaukee even, like I wouldn't expect, that's not a fair comparison.
No.
So I think obviously from the context of like when I discuss a tool, I'm really going off of the intended user. And then I'd always say, like, if you're, say, a pro who does this occasionally, maybe this still works, or, you know what I mean? Like, you try to give context to it. I think that's really valuable. But there's nothing worse than when a brand is really excited about a product and you get it and you're like, so yeah, about that.
Yeah. It's tough. And we've got, and I can say this about most power tool companies out there that are just the name brand people that have been doing construction. And I'm not saying anything bad about anybody, but they start getting into, okay, I'm going to make power tools, and wow, now we're a lawn equipment company, or now we're a coffee making company, and now we're a
dude.
Dial it back, guys. Dial it back. Can you just make really good tools that we can use and not try to be everything to everybody?
Right. And, diversification is great, right? Only if, though, you're not sacrificing quality to do it. Once you start sending out, or once you start producing products that are kind of lame, that you're like, nobody is going to use this against this brand, or like, especially if you're going against a brand that's all they do, like, don't compare it to, this specialty manufacturer that's all they're doing is OPE or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, your lawnmower is not going to stack up, or your blower is not going to stack up, and
chainsaw or whatever, right?
Yes. Stop expecting it to. But it's business models, right? Like, we've talked about this also. Like, there's brands that produce hundreds of new tools every year. And obviously that's their right.
Yep.
I'm always hesitant to put a lot of my energy into that because to me, unless you're making, just updated SKUs basically and changing like one or two small details and it's the same as the last model, what happens is quality gets sacrificed a lot. And
Sure.
and I think, you and I noticed, not to name names, but that has happened with a handful of brands that we both know and have worked with. And
I'm pointing to them on my wall, but you can't see my
I was
wall.
I was like, can people see that?
Nope, they can't.
Right? Where I'd rather see those companies, in contrast, there's those companies that are like launching 10 new tools a year or something, or 20 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Depending on the brand. And they tend to just be so well thought out that like, if they're bringing it to market, it's because like blood, sweat, and tears went into it.
Yeah.
And
versus us being the test audience and going, hope it works.
yeah. Now I will say too, one thing that's neat to like switch gears kind of, but in the same vein, you probably get the opportunity like I do where I'll have tools pre-production.
Yes.
And so that is an interesting position because it's not meant to be talked about publicly. They're
Correct.
literally asking for our feedback on it, which is such a crazy thing to like know. It's very humbling because you're like, this brand is literally so invested in my opinion that they're going to take my feedback and do something with it.
And usually, just so people can understand, it's tools show up. It's not in the final packaging. It's in a box. There's maybe not instructions that come with it,
Yes.
There's
oftentimes it'll say like number 1 of 12 or whatever, however many production units.
Yeah. So it's really rudimentary. And they're just saying, hey, go play with it hard and let us know what we didn't do right.
Yes. And in those cases, once those tools come out and you can talk about it, my perspective, I always give it a little latitude knowing it wasn't the final production version.
Sure.
To be fair. Okay. But I also always do say that. So I think disclosure is important. Power tool reviews is such an interesting space because like, especially once you're at a point where you're getting sponsorships and we do get free tools and oftentimes then also get, compensated on top of that. But like how you and I have always approached it, and we've talked about this before, there's not a single brand that has ever written me a check that I did not buy tools before they ever knew who I existed.
Amen.
Yeah. Like if I wouldn't spend the money on it, like I'll say that. And if people don't like it, like from a brand perspective, I would never be disrespectful. I would also, I always go out of my way to let the brand know, like, this is what I'm going to criticize. I want you to know so that there's not a surprise, but that nobody gets control over what I say, and that's so important because I think that gets lost in the mix too a little bit.
Oh, I had a company, and I'm going to make this so nobody knows what I'm talking about, but they'd sent me a drill and a power impact and drill set and saw. And in my video, I went, I mean, if you're a homeowner, this might work for you, but you're not going to build a house with it.
Right. And also too, like, to be fair, if you are a homeowner and you're looking to like set up bookcases or you're looking to hang a few pictures or whatever, do you need a $400 drill and impact set? No. Like,
of course not.
So, I think that's where that perspective, like, what a perfect way to say that, because it is not a pro level tool, but if you don't need that, that's pretty awesome too,
Yeah. If it's inexpensive and it's in your ballpark and you're doing it, it's, who cares? Great. It'll get the job done. But, the other part of that too is, and I have this argument as well with many people in the woodworking industry and builders, remodelers out there. You can take a skilled craftsperson and give them a horrible tool and they will struggle building that awesome as well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I see both sides of that. I feel that tools are part of it. I think good tools maybe make your process easier, but like nobody can replace skill, like an experience. No tool is going to come in and be able to like do what I can do on its own without me behind it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
And I think, yes. So I feel like I don't know. I couldn't quite tell if that's where you're going with that, but I think that that's a huge part of it is like, I know people who literally are in their garage using tools they bought at Walmart and do work that is so beyond anything else that, Joe Blow is making with his high-end stuff. Like, it's just, I think skill and like true effort and time and passion for it. I think that stuff, you can't buy that, where you can buy better tools.
Not at all. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. You can go out and spend $10,000 in a shop, and if you still don't have that skill and that attention to detail, it's still going to look at that versus you sitting there with, 40-year-old power equipment that should be on a shelf in a museum versus in your shop.
So well said, though. But I think I do think it's, it is such a kind of a weird juxtaposition, because I think sometimes the power tool industry, and it's not really directed at any one brand or one manufacturer or even the attitude, really. I think, though, part of it is that newer, better, faster, stronger, whatever. And I think we've lost a little bit of sight of like skill.
Yes.
And being willing to say, like, I posted yesterday, I'm welding something. I am not a welder. Okay. Can I weld? Yes. Big difference, though, right?
Huge difference.
Big difference. I am not a welder, but I can weld. It'll pass with some work to clean up. But I think saying that sometimes is like necessary. I feel strongly that I think, and this comes down to that social media aspect really more than anything, that it's so easy to kind of like overstate ourselves. And like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm not an expert in this. I want to hear from you. Like, I want your feedback. You're the expert. Tell me, teach me. Because I think that kind of like arrogance, if you will, and I don't know if that's the right word, but
there is a little bravado, a little arrogance,
kind of being unwilling to hear other people. I think that's a very common thing that we see. And what ends up happening is, unfortunately, you're not doing yourself any favors, because I can learn from somebody who's done it 50 years, something I would have never known. But I'm going to also say that if somebody just got into something and they have a different method that works and it's working for them, there's not one right or wrong. It's just different. And I think you can also equally learn from somebody who's approaching it for the first time, Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
And I think that like, let's all respect our, where you're at, and be willing to share my information and your information, like share what you know, and also listen to what you see so that, we can be the best we can be, like team effort.
Absolutely. It's no different than when I had, and I know I drive them crazy sometimes, but when I had the electrician out to redo the panel in my house a couple of years ago, it needed a new one. I didn't have time to do it. And I could have done it. And I'm just like, I'm just going to have them do it. We, got it taken care of. But did I spend a bunch of time watching and chatting with the electrician, 100%. Learning little tips and tricks? 100%. Same with my heating and cooling system. When they came in, I knew the guys, so it was even better. So I learned a lot of details on what's right and what's not so right. And there was a lot of cool little details that I learned that before that project, I didn't really know it because I don't do it every day.
Well, and it's funny. I had when I was in Portland, we replaced the spring setup on both of our garage doors. And could I have done this? No question. That's not the issue, though. Did I want to do it?
Heck no.
Not really. So we paid somebody to come in, and this is the same person that we've worked with in the past many years ago. And my husband was like, he was really cool. He knew who you were. And we talked about that a little bit. And he said, but just curious, he asked why you didn't want to do it yourself. And Matt already knew, when obviously Matt's my husband. And he said, it comes down to, I'm going to value somebody's skill. You know what I mean? That is something that if in an emergency I needed to do 100%, I've repaired more than my fair share of garage doors.
Sure.
Did I want to completely do it, especially when you're dealing with like springs and tension, and it's like, can be dangerous, and it's going to take me 2 days probably to do what they could do in a couple hours.
Yep.
There is value in respecting somebody else's experience. But when I've worked with them in the past, like, I asked a million questions. And I think that's, it may not be something I'm doing day to day, but why wouldn't you want that information? Like, curiosity is our greatest gift, right? Like,
and
we're never going to be bored.
I had what was it, 6 months ago? I was heading out, go running through the garage door shuts, and I hear boom as the one of the springs let goes. And of course, I looked at it, and I know two people that broke their jaw with doing garage doors. And I
Yes.
just went, this is cheaper than my hospital deductible. And
Well,
can I
and
do it?
that's-
Absolutely. But
Exactly. So
I'll
it's
hire a
time,
pro.
but then it's also like if you do get hurt and it takes you out of, and like I had a lot going on at the time and like with traveling and stuff. And so one of the doors was messed up, but they were both like 15 years old, the springs were. So like it was time anyway. And we knew that. And so I had budgeted for it at some point this year to do. And so I was like, just get them both done at the same time, like be done, and that way we're inconveniencing somebody less because this person can do this job and, half the time or whatever, than if I called them out 2 different occasions, and it less work for me because now nobody had to be here twice.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes too, we all forget that like, all of our time is worth money, but also like your sanity and like, what do you have on your plate? Like, I was like, I don't have it in my schedule to fit that in.
Oh no, you were out hanging out with me.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm leaving Saturday for LA. So like, it's like, oh my God, and then I'm home for a few weeks and I'm out again.
Exactly.
It never really ends.
Yeah, no. And that's a good call because there's a lot of things I can tackle, but that was just one of those that I'm like, I'm going to spend hours just making sure I got the right spring.
Exactly. Well, and so I will say there are times I really don't mind. I want to say toughen it out. Like if something like when I've rebuilt like small mower engines and stuff like that, those are some of the best learning experiences possible. But in my mind too, you have to calculate the risk. Like what I was doing to it, like worse was it wasn't going to start. Do you know what I mean? Like I wasn't going to lose time. In my mind, what I was gaining was experience and knowledge in it. And so you could say that for the garage door thing, but springs have hurt a lot of people. Yeah. So there's a time when you're just like electricity, right? Just like sometimes calling in the experts and letting them do it makes way more sense than like kind of beating your head against the wall.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
I have built my own race motors. I have rebuilt transmissions. Doing a garage door spring technically is not that hard, but I just looked at it and went, I'm not going to get hurt doing that today. I just don't have the time for that.
You know what it is too? You're going to laugh, but like, I hate being on ladders for like long periods of time. So that is part of my consideration is like standing up there with your arms above your head for like hours. I mean, because again, it's not something I'm an expert in. I'm like, what is that going to do the rest of the week when I have to get work done? Even if I could find the time to physically do what I was going to, it just, you have to weigh all that out. And I think that's also, it's the joke of the year of like, or the century, if you will, that like, I bet if you walk in your house, you've got things that are 90% done. That is me to the nth degree. Because sometimes like deadlines for other people, whether it's a brand or whether it's just a individual purchasing a product, like they have to come first. So like my pantry doesn't have outlet covers on it still a year later.
You probably talked to Julie enough that she's the same thing. Yeah. It's like, you're right. The base trim's not done in my living room because I'm going to film that soon. I got to film that. And that's why it's not done. I'm going to
get right to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
So it's on the list.
Yeah. And I think it's said like we're in any, like I would say skilled trade of any sort, even if you went into like hair or nails, even like, let's just switch it up just to, give some perspective. I mean, how many people have ever like done your hair or your nails that are like, they just got fresh. You know what I mean? Like the reality is like when you do it every day, it's easy to like put your stuff aside, So legitimately, I've done 29, 30 years in kitchen and bath design. And last year was the first time I actually did my own kitchen to the studs. That's so crazy. I'm going to be doing that soon. But I have a load bearing wall and woohoo. I know, super fun. So we're going to have to get really creative on that. That's one that you bring in a structural engineer because it's a 2-story house. Yeah. Anyway,
you got to do all that.
Obviously. We don't take
chances. You need help
there.
designing though. Let's chat because I still have my
it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be super fun because like I joked about the pantry just now, but that used to be a breezeway in my house and we enclosed it. Like I raised the slab to be the same level and enclosed it. So now I have this amazing 120 square foot pantry.
Sweet.
So like, right. Which I love to cook and bake. So like it was a big deal. Awesome. And ours was like super tiny. And I was like, this is so weird that this house this size has that. but that pantry will now end up being part of the kitchen. So there's going to be a big, in our house is laid out funny. It's like the late 90s layout where it's like semi-open, semi-not. They weren't sure what they wanted to do. Lots of rounded corners on the
I was going to say rounded corners everywhere, archways, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, the arches that aren't not for me.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's going to be a fun one. I just honestly, there's only so many hours in the day. I keep telling Matt, I'm like, God, I got to get to this kitchen, but who knows? But when I do, you're like the first person.
Yeah. Let's chat about that.
Yeah. And actually when I was at IWF, which was a international woodworking fair.
Yeah.
I walked through like the cabinetry section and was talking a little bit to Revashelf. You've heard of them?
Oh yeah. Know them well. I know all those guys really well. So.
Dude, some of the creativity in these like inner cabinet workings, I was like, you have literally like a knife block under I was like, this gives me so much inspiration.
So like I have the powered trash can. So when, you can bump your knee up against it and it pushes the trash can up. It's the Bloom, their whole system there. So it's just touch.
We've probably all seen at some point, like, how somebody has the mixer in the bottom cabinet and they pull it up. Okay. So I thought that was as far as this tech has gone. Wrong again. Like I was amazed. I was like, okay. And I didn't really spend a lot of time at the booth either. I just was like, okay. I mean, I was like, I'm going to make my kitchen 3 times as big because I want all of these cabinetry options.
And I can tell you, I can help you navigate that because some of those things are super cool.
Yeah.
And some of them suck enough that you go, oh, this is awesome. And then 2 months later, it's in the corner of the garage because you went, nah, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
So I'll help you navigate that.
Yeah, that would be good. Because honestly, that would be such a bummer if like all that extra labor, time, work, energy went into it. And then it was like, I'm going to redo our master bedroom too.
Cool.
The bathroom. Sorry, I said bedroom, bathroom, master bathroom. But I want to do some cool cabinetry in there, but I'm going to build those from the ground up.
Of course you are.
Of course I am. In the kitchen, I'll be honest, I may not build those cabinets from the ground up. And that's probably been why I haven't done it. For no other reason than to get enough cabinets. Like, where would I store them once they're assembled?
I used to run cabinet shops. It is so much work.
Yeah. Whereas like a few vanities in smaller cabinets, no problem. But I don't have the space. I'd have to like rent a U-Haul to store them short term. I don't know. It wouldn't, I don't know that it would be logically sensical. Yeah. Whereas if you go through a manufacturer, like you order it in advance and then it gets in and
shows up,
it's done in a day or two. Yeah. Like it's kind of,
I get that.
You gotta weigh it. You gotta weigh it. Sometimes things make sense. Even if you have the skill, you gotta make sense of it.
Oh, I could totally build my own cabinets. Did I do that? No, I didn't.
I mean, I've done it. Like I did it in my laundry room. I did it in my pantry, and like of course, like I did it in the kids' bathrooms. But like, again, scale.
Yeah.
And if they were open and didn't have doors or weren't painted for 6 months, like it was okay. Whereas your kitchen, you need that functional pretty quickly.
Absolutely. It's got to be tough too, because it's going to get, a bathroom gets a different wear than your kitchen does. So
that's honestly why I really haven't done it, is because like I just don't know if I can handle the chaos of like, and being somebody who's worked in people's homes like that's going through that, like I don't envy them. And I think it's important to always put yourself in another person's position, because like, that's hard. It's hard to have your house upended like that. Oh, especially when you have kids and like we have 2 dogs and like, it's a lot. But yeah, I dread it. Yeah. Even being somebody who is going to be doing the most of it myself. You know what I mean?
No, it's not fun. I got to ask you. So you and I weren't in the same class, but we got to go play with metal this last week.
The blacksmithing?
Yeah. Wasn't that fun?
It was like the coolest thing. I cannot even imagine how overwhelming it had to be like for the owner of that shop, because there's a lot of people there, right? Dude, that was a first for me. I've never done it. It's something I've always wanted to do.
Yep.
So I wish I could have slowed down and just like taken in more of it, but it was the coolest thing ever. Like Keen
I
really
love working with
planned that
metal,
out.
so that's my medium. I actually took auto body class in high school and college so I could do my own hot rod stuff. So
that's
me
badass.
working with metal, English wheel, that kind of stuff. And I had not used a power hammer like that in 20 years, but I got on it and the kid looks over at me, he goes, the kid with the curly hair, and there goes, "You've done this before." I'm like, it's been a lot of years.
And that thing was serious. So I don't know if you knew, I obviously had, not that everybody knew, but I had like a terrible migraine walking into it.
Oh,
yes.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So like power hammer plus migraine, plus it was hot. I was like, I'm struggling, but I'm going to enjoy every moment of this. Like it was unreal to be a part of that. And like I said, they, Keen really thought that through and like what a lot of us would really enjoy. So I didn't realize you'd done so much metalwork in your history, because now it makes me feel kind of like, now you need to come and build some furniture with me a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mix
That'd
it up.
Be a great time. Yeah.
Right. And now I want to learn more metal from you, bud.
Oh yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's great, but that was to describe what these power hammers are. You might've seen them, on TV shows and some of the automotive stuff, but think of a 2-ton big rod coming down that is
over and over,
just junk.
Yeah.
Junk.
It's
Shakes the
funny
building.
because they were massive. Like, I don't think I really thought too hard about how that stuff, came to be. But yeah, I mean, they were massive and they were loud. And like, these things were like, I thought like my bandsaw was pretty big. I have a big bandsaw. That one was like, those power hammers were like the footprint, the sheer size was incredible. And the amount of force they hit with was absolutely shocking. Like, I don't think anything. Then too, like the kiln that he was heating everything in first, like I have a kiln for pottery. Again, it's just me trying to always do everything.
But you're not grabbing stuff out of it when it's on and hot, right?
No, I was like, oh my God, this dude's hand. I can't believe I have no idea how. I can only imagine some of the burns he's had.
6 inches away from the front of that thing, and he's grabbing hot metal out of that. And it's just like, wow.
But if you're doing it every day, like the thing is, it's funny because
it's like a table saw when you're doing it every day.
Right. Like your experience. And like, that's where the safety police, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, experience is really very relevant. Flip side, we all could be safer no matter how much you know what I mean? Like everybody should always do the best they can to avoid injury. But I was absolutely like, holy crap. Yeah. This dude's I'm going to lose. Somebody's going to lose a hand. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't believe. Yeah.
Yeah. That is one of the most intimidating tools. The first time you go up to it and you're going to push down on that lever.
Yeah.
There is an intimidation factor that is very high, 100%. More so than most tools.
Yes. And I don't know if you saw this, but like there was like part of the machine. So obviously it's massive, and it was very obvious that it had been like recently greased, which is great because you could see like grease coming out of the bearings. And like, I mean, it was just like, what in the world am I doing? I mean, it was so neat. Like I wish I had a chance to just like walk around and look at all the other tools. Cause as much as like, that is not something we see every day.
Yeah.
He also had like belt sanders and like, I mean, where I'm like, this is so rad. Like,
you could have left me in there for a week and I wouldn't have come out. You know what I mean?
I know. And for as much was going on in that shop, I will say you could tell that the man who owned it, like he'd been doing it forever. He's probably been in that same location for a long time.
Yeah. But Did you notice the stamps on some of those machines?
The what?
The stamps where they were made? So there's one of those big hammers there had the CCCP made in USSR. It was a piece of Russian government machine. And I'm like, not sure how that made it out of the country, but it's pretty cool.
But he was Russian, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was. But it was like, he had friends in high places to get that out. And,
no kidding.
80s and 90s.
I didn't even realize that. Like, and now I want to feel like we should go back and ask questions.
Yeah, I'll send you the picture. I took a picture of the tag. Because I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's cool.
No kidding. Like that's like a relic too. Like that's wow. I mean, it was funny though, because looking around the shop, as chaotic as it was, like you could tell it was like really well organized. And I like really enjoy walking into a shop that I always kind of get like roll my eyes a little bit when you see somebody shop like super meticulous and like you're a woodworker, but there's not a speck of dust or like nothing's out on like, 'cause that's not, come on, you're not working in there then, right? That's not realistic.
Look at my chaos behind me. I mean, it's,
like
stuff's thrown up on the wall and,
Yeah, like if it's too organized, I'm kind of like, right. But I loved that, like, you could tell it was organized, but used. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about that energy that was really, like, palpable. And I don't know. I get a kick out of that. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, you could see what the purpose was for everything. And that everything had been cared for, used, but cared for.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, some of that stuff was, like, had to be 20, 30, 40 years old. Like, easy. But everything had a place, and like there was a method to the madness, if you will. Like, I mean, it was interesting. It would have been cool to like have spent more time exploring, you know?
Yeah, I got to go back there, and I'm going to take one of his knife classes. I've got to do that because I'm curious to
do
see.
It.
Got to do it. It'd be a good TV segment, if anything.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure too when it's probably even cooler when it's only a couple people, or if you could ever do like a private one-on-one, like because I feel like you could tell that he had so much information in his head. You know what I mean?
He was trying to rush 20 people to build pry bars with a bent end on it, like a crowbar for
it was very
3
ambitious.
hours. You know what I mean? It was pretty cool considering.
Yeah, it would. No, I mean, of course. And that was what was neat. It was like, God, I don't think I realized how much went into it. Because when they were like, oh, we're going to be doing this. And I'm like, I think we're going to make like a keychain. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I didn't really ask, right? Like, but I would have never imagined he would have even tried to take that on. That had to be a lot. And it was, I mean, the coolest thing. Like, you'll have to let me know how the knife class goes. Cause like, I want to go make my own hammer really bad.
There you go.
Right? Wouldn't that be dope?
That would be super fun. Put your logo on the side of it.
Yeah, right? Like that would be so rad.
There you go.
It was good times. That was a fun event.
That was a lot of fun. Well, Sarah, we are running out of time, so we got to make sure that we send people your way here. Okay. So how can everybody track you down?
Oh, well, that's easy. So toolgirlsgarage.com is my blog. But then, of course, you can always find me on any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. At Tool Girls Garage or Sarah Listi.
You got it. And the TV show over on Roku.
Oh, yes, of course. Wow, I'm really bad at this, aren't I?
See?
The TV show, I am the host with my co-host, Mikkel, on season 2 of Murder House Flip. You can find that on Roku channel and also on the Roku website.
Check it out. It gets the Around the House seal of approval, so it is super cool.
Hey, I'll take that. That's like a million pats on the back.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on today, Sarah.
No, thanks anytime. You need to fill in. I'm your girl.
We'll be doing it again. I'm Eric G, and you've been listening to Around the House.
Somewhere unseen and undiscovered, anywhere beyond the mean. Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over the radio with you.
Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you planning a decking or siding project this year? If you are, you've got to check out my friends at Millboard. Millboard is a completely different kind of composite decking and cladding that enhances outdoor spaces with enduring distinction. Hand-molded from the finest oak, it realistically mimics the natural grain and color of premium hardwood. If you're looking for something that doesn't look like plastic and instead real wood, check out millboard.com. Make sure and check out that interview we did just a few weeks back. That's millboard.com.